It's on. Good evening. I'll now call to order the Clarke County August 23rd, 2021 school board meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any questions about tonight's agenda?
I would move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any questions about the consent agenda?
I would move that we accept that as presented as well.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Dr. Bishop, Superintendent's update.
A few items for this evening. For a grant from the Clarke County Education Foundation, Boyce and Cooley have received a set of virtual reality headsets for students. Those devices are available for classroom use and accompanied by lesson plans. The Education Foundation also recently approved a $10,842 grant to support the continued partnership between Boyce and Cooley and the Discovery Museum. That partnership will include professional development, virtual activities, a speaking field trips, in-school evening events, and a family night at the museum. Pat Hausman, our supervisor of instructional technology, recently earned certification as a certified educational technology leader through COSIN. The CETL program is the only accredited practice-based certification program available to education technology leaders. It bridges technical knowledge, understanding of the educational environment, leadership, and vision, and the management of technology and support resources. Then we have a July food service report with information. You can see since the pandemic began to the end of July, so March 13, 2020, to the end of July, Clarke County food service staff has served over 400,000 meals to students and individuals in our community between their leadership meals. That's all I have for this evening.
Wow. Any questions for Dr. Bishop? No? Okay. Audience comments. Audience comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Those wishing to speak should fill out a speaker's card and present it to the clerk. Ms. Weir?
First person is Kurt Van Oosteren.
Hey, good afternoon, or good evening, guys. No, I have 3 minutes, so I just want to basically talk about two issues, and that's it. Is basically just vaccine and kind of salaries. Vaccines, I don't get why the school is not mandating vaccines for your staff. I mean, the military, the government, hospitals, colleges, Fairfax County schools are basically going to start mandating. Corporations from airlines, Amtrak, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Netflix. I mean, I can go on and on and on, and probably the most ironic, Fox News, of course, Walt Disney, Walmart. All these entities have vaccine eligible people, and we have to mandate them, which is, it's just first frustrating as hell. I think it should be just obvious you should be doing this for just our society and for your own self-health. Schools, on the other hand, they do not have a choice. 98% of the group of these children coming in, and especially where my son is going, they don't have a choice. They're under 12. They can't get a vaccine. And not only that, you know, they're attending they basically are required for MMRs. They're required for basically until they're 16. I don't really have a choice. So I really don't get it why the school system isn't requiring. And you know, all I hear is, you know, either two reasons, either be like a political side or, you know, backlash from the community, or I hear all the time as well about not enough staff. They may lose staff. But quite honestly, I don't want to sound harsh, but that's not my problem about staffing, or it's a budget issue. And if we're going to start talking about, you know, budgets and pay and such, you know, just on, for example, Fairfax County has a $3.4 billion budget, and they spend 83% of their budget for salaries and their staff and benefits. Clarke County has a $27 million budget, and they basically spend 63%. I just don't get where your guys' priorities are about just protecting the kids. The most important thing in this school are kids and teachers. No offense. We have a superintendent makes about a 170. A assistant superintendent makes about 135. You have principals that make over 100,000. You have basically assistant principals that make over 100,000. You know what the average salary for a teacher in Clarke County is? About 46,000. That's insulting. Why do you think these teachers aren't going and staying here in Clarke County? They're leaving. I think all the top end, high dollar, people are nice and comfortable, but why don't you have teachers? I think it's pretty obvious. You're not taking care of your teachers. That's the most important thing, not besides the kids and being safe and getting a proper education. And requiring masks is great. So I'll kind of end it at this. When my child goes to school, coming in the following weeks, not only is his teacher better be wearing a mask properly, but that teacher better be vaccinated as well. That's basically all I have to say, because it's just, again, I'm like, preaching at the choir about dealing with vaccines. It's not like 2.5 years ago, and we all got, caught and we're trying to deal with the situation. There's no excuse why anybody who's in front of children that are under 12 that don't have a choice shouldn't be vaccinated. And again, I said, if we may lose them, well, get another job. Sorry to sound harsh, but there's plenty of people. And if you're having problems getting staff, start paying your teachers $100,000 a year like some people, and you'll have a line of them out. That's a coolie waiting to apply and come in here. I'll end it at that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Rachel Davis is next. If you all don't mind speaking a little louder, I don't know if it's the masks or problems with the microphones.
I wasn't loud enough?
We can hear you.
Yes.
I'll do it again.
Is the light on the microphone?
Oh, yeah, it's on.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I'm here to talk about masking. So we've been told for almost 2 years now that widespread forced public masking should be implemented because if only moderately to slightly to negligibly effective at curbing the spread of COVID-19, that there are zero drawbacks. Remember 15 days to slow the spread? What's the harm, they ask? It's only a minor inconvenience, they patronize. If it only saves one life, it's worth it, they scream incredulously.
Excuse me. It may be a little off, but could you put your mask over your nose? Up properly? Yeah. Thank you.
Better? All right. Meanwhile, we the parents have not only continued to point to real-world data that shows masking to be ineffective, we've also maintained that forced public masking, especially long-term, has negative societal and either health ramifications that bureaucrats are all too happy to ignore in subservience to their newfound vast-maced God. It only stands to reason that one of those health ramifications would be the fact that millions of people, particularly children, have been forced to wear and carry around pieces of cloth they continually breathe through for hours on end. Well, what kind of lurking pathogens might be found on those disgusting contraptions while being inconsistently handled, stuck in pockets, mindlessly tossed on books, tables, and desks? Well, one group of Florida parents actually sent a batch of masks worn by children to a lab to find out, and yeah, you'll probably not want to be eating when you digest those results. And I have a list of those findings. It is perplexing to me that as a medical doctor, you wouldn't fight against the kids that this is the decision when there's absolutely zero scientific proof that wearing a piece of fabric over your face stops anything smaller than spit from escaping, especially something so small you need a high-powered electron microscope to see, which is why virologists and doctors don't use them. The packages even state on the back that there are no medical qualities to them, and yet there are no regulations as to what kind of masks are required, which most are not effective, even recommended by the CDC. However, there is plenty of proof that cloth mask becomes non-consequential and begin to do harm 20 minutes after saturation as the cloth begins to gather wet bacteria coming from the children's mouths, and if not cleaned daily, will grow bacteria that they begin to breathe in.
There's also plenty of evidence to the dangers like acne, depression, impeding breathing, along with their own CO2 that they recycle for 8 hours a day, developmental issues, anxiety, and more. So your statement on the board that says the schools remain 100% committed to the meeting of the academic, social, and emotional needs of our students is what perplexes me. How can you be 100% committed to their social and emotional needs when there's evidence that masking our children causes more harm? And it's just going on with no pushback. And I want to know, when does it end? When does it ever end? The 56th wave of the 22nd variant and the 853rd booster we're supposed to get? The real pandemic, however, is that from April to October in 2020, the U.S. saw an increase of 25% in children suffering from depression ages 5 to 11 and increased by 31% for those aged 12 to 17 years old. In June of 2020, 25% of those children, 18 to 24, reported suicidal thoughts. In fact, the rate jumped as much as 50% in teenage girls during the pandemic. Emergency room visits for suicide attempts among girls between the ages of 17 and 12, or 12 to 17, increased by 26%. Largely, these alarming rates are in response to the fact that our children have faced isolation, no proper socialization, and from being masked, which also studies have shown have negative effects on social development in young children. In conclusion, I believe if we are genuinely concerned about the health of our children, then we should be fighting to make an option for us parents to decide what's best for our families. Not to be rude, but the last time I checked, we didn't vote for the CDC as the fourth branch of government in charge of making decisions for my children. I have been the mother of 3 filthy boys for 19 years. One is 13 and the other is 10. I have handled hand, foot, and mouth disease, strep, pink eye, colds, flus, tons of infectious, contagious diseases on my own without needing the government to tell me how. I myself had COVID in February 2020 and managed not to get one of my kids or husband sick.
Ms. Davis, can you wrap it up?
Yep. With all due respect, we the people do not need the government or the school board making, not that you guys did that, making decisions for us. We are in charge of science, math, and English to the best of your ability, which you do admirably, by the way. But I do not appreciate being dictated or on anybody who's not an expert on raising my children. Each parent should have the right to make medical decisions on our own, and no one else has the right to take that from us.
Thank you.
And may I submit the...
Ms. Ware?
Daniel Vaught.
Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel Vaught. I'm a resident of Berryville, and I'm also in the district represented by Ms. Kerr-Hobart. You may have, heard of me from my emails that I've been sending you, and so I didn't prepare any remarks today. I wanted to just first say thank you for the hard work that you're doing. I know this is not an easy position for you all. I can tell from the return to school plan that a lot of thought was put into it. I do not necessarily agree with everything in there, obviously, but I know that you guys all have good intentions, so I appreciate that. My son will be excited to be attending Cooley this year. What I did want to just say, though, is that I do hope that that we don't go into this school year blindly and faithfully and only focusing on what's on national news or what's happening in Florida or what does the CDC say. I really do hope that we're evaluating what's happening at a local level, a state level, a national level, not just what the CDC is saying, what the WHO is saying, or what other academics are saying, what studies are saying. That this isn't just a unilateral decision, that we're taking into account a lot of different sources. Because I do think that if we go into the school year like that and we reevaluate our stance on a quarterly basis, if that's what the plan's going to be, that we may see that other school districts that don't have mask mandates are doing just fine. Or we may see that other school districts have better ventilation policies, and that's something we could implement. I just hope that we're all being self-critical and that we're trying to make sure that we're always doing right by our children. Our children have suffered almost 2 years now of being masked, of not having adequate schooling, being remote, hybrid, whatever, and school should be a wonderful place for them to be happy and to express their feelings and to play and to learn how to read and write and pronounce properly. And I worry that school is going to feel more like a place that that is dangerous, and that there's some sort of germ vectors. And our children are beautiful, and my child's beautiful, and I just want to make sure that people can see his smile, he can see the teacher's smiles. And if we evaluate the data and we evaluate how things are going in the community and it says that it's safe, then let's do that. Let's be brave. Let's make sure that we're not just going into this blindly. That we're trying to just self-evaluate. I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak? No? Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Is it all right?
Yep.
I'll be quick. I don't have prepared remarks or anything, but I am Sarah Leeser. My son is about to be 6. He's going to go to Boyce. I'm really excited. He's really excited. We're all a little nervous about COVID. It was a huge relief to see the mask mandate come down in my email. My kid has been at preschool for the last 4 years at a wonderful preschool. They are all masking. The 4 and 5-year-olds are masking. My son is proud to mask and like kind of militant about it. He's like, my mask covers my nose. It's not a problem. It doesn't affect his enjoyment of school at all. And I don't think that it will. I mean, they wear shoes, they wear shirts, they would do all these things that they don't want to do when they're toddlers, and you're like, hey, this is just the rule. I'm sorry, there's a lot of rules that are kind of dumb when you're a kid. Just do it. If we can keep kids safe, it's huge because he can't get vaccinated. And I just am really grateful that you guys are following the CDC and trying to make this a safe environment so my kid can go to school this year. That's it.
Thank you. Okay. Discussion of return to school plan. Dr. Bishop, before you get started, and maybe you're going to start with this anyway, I would like you to just start off with the state mandate for masks, and kind of go through that first as we go through
Sure.
this plan. And maybe you're planning on doing that, but I want to make sure
Sure.
that's highlighted first.
Is it on? No?
I can't hear well.
Doesn't sound like it.
Do you want mine?
I need somebody's. How about now? You sure? Charles says it's better. Okay. So, Senate Bill 1303 was passed last year in the General Assembly, March of 2021. And that bill states that a couple of things. One is it prioritizes in-person learning for all students. The caveat, though, is that you should follow the CDC recommendations to the greatest extent possible. So while the CDC really has no authority per se, those recommendations count. So as much as Mr. Wright stated, we have to watch local data and so forth, we will do that just as we did last year. However, until the CDC changes their recommendations, we're responsible, based on Acts of Assembly 456, to follow the CDC recommendations. At our last meeting, which was the 7th, 6th, somewhere in there, you did have opportunity to look at our proposed return to school plan. And in that plan, we actually proposed a mask mandate. That was several days prior to the governor announcing a public health order that came out. I don't like a mask any more than anybody else. And I'm one of the nearly 87% of the employees in Clarke County that have been fully vaccinated. But I do believe it gives us the best chance for our children to be in school 5 days a week. We know more and more now, and I'm going to stray a little bit from where you wanted me to go. We know more and more now that even fully vaccinated people, it helps, but the variant, there are more and more people we're hearing stories about that are coming down and COVID positive. Maybe not severe symptoms or severe reaction or severe illness, but more and more people are becoming COVID positive who have been vaccinated. So this is a mandate, one, in state law, to follow the CDC guidelines. Failure to do so is punishable by a misdemeanor. Myself and every member of this board takes an oath of office that we will follow the laws established in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and we intend to do that. So I'll be happy to address anything else.
That's fine. I just wanted people in the room and those who are listening to just know off the bat that this isn't something that we're deciding to do in a silo. And since COVID started, and how many ever years ago, what was it, 2020?
10.
We have been committed to making sure we rely on experts, whether it's the CDC, whether it's the public health department, whether it's mandates from the state. We all recognize that we are not the experts here. And so this is something I take personally and as the chair of the board, that we don't make these decisions lightly. We don't make them based on any political position. We don't make any of our decisions based on just some fluke. So I just want to make that very, very clear, which is why I wanted Dr. Bishop to just quickly explain the mandate. So Dr. Bishop, go ahead and we can talk.
Sure, it's my understanding that the people out there can hear the podium mic even though I can't hear the feedback like I might normally. So today I attached just some notes that I'll follow along for the public and for folks to go back and take a look at and for board members to follow along with. So if you look at the data as of today, Clarke County is designated as high community transmission. The 7-day positivity rate in Clarke is 6.93%, slightly lower than that of Virginia and the Lord Fairfax Health District as a whole. In terms of vaccination status, Virginia population with one dose is 62.8%, Lord Fairfax Health District 49.4%, and Clarke population with one dose is 57.7%. Now that's the entire population, even though we know that 12 or 11-year-olds and under are not able to be vaccinated yet. The Virginia population of fully vaccinated, about 55.5%. Lord Fairfax Health District, 43, almost 43.5%. Clarke County population fully vaccinated, 52%. The adult-only population in Clarke, 67.3%, with one dose. The adult population fully vaccinated, 61%. In terms of CCPS staff, we have 290 regular or full-time employees. We did a survey that went out 2 weeks ago. Folks had until August 13 to respond. We did receive 265 responses to the vaccine survey. 229 of those people are fully vaccinated, 86.4%. 3 individuals have one dose, so it's 0.01%. 28 are not vaccinated. Some of that could be a personal choice. Some of it could be related to some kind of medical condition. And then 5 are actually interested in the vaccination. So we can make that happen pretty quickly for those 5 people. I did start communication today with the Lord Fairfax Health District to schedule a booster vaccine for staff sometime later this fall. Just a couple of things to mention. I've already talked a little bit about Senate Bill 1303. I won't rehash that. Although, what I will mention is related to school closures. If health conditions necessitate a classroom or a school closure to address the level of community transmission in the school building, or transmission in the school building, we have to make that decision in collaboration with the health department. We did all last year. Robin Cather, our lead nurse, stayed in direct communication with Leah Shirley and other staff at the epidemiologist at the health department to make sure that we were making informed decisions. Those closures should last for as long as it's necessary to address and ameliorate the level of transmission of COVID-19 in the building. Then there are a couple of more pieces of legislation that were also passed last year in the General Assembly. It provides us some options to employ remote learning on unscheduled days if we have to use them in limited circumstances. So severe weather or other emergency situations have resulted in closing of a school. For in-person instruction, the school division may declare an unscheduled remote learning day whereby the school provides instruction and student services that are consistent with guidelines established by the Department of Education. We shall not claim more than 10 unscheduled remote learning days unless Dr. Lane, our superintendent of public instruction, approves that. We have been told via a superintendent's memo last Wednesday that we should be prepared for school closures if necessary, or classroom level closures if necessary, and we've been given some guidance on how to do that. Although last year we did it pretty effectively, very effectively, I think. And we should be prepared to transition individual students in and out of quarantine related to COVID-19. Again, we have a little bit of experience with that, unfortunately, throughout last year. We also do have legal opinion. Shared that with you after the public health order was issued by the health commissioner. Your school board attorney did provide some information to you and an interpretation of various pieces of that document, and our return to school plan has been updated accordingly. Primarily, the school return to school plan remained the same, except for a few changes that were appropriate after our last meeting. On page 3, there is reference to the health commissioner's order that was issued on August 12th, requiring face masks in K-12 schools. At the bottom of page 3, face coverings, masks are also required for all students and staff on school transportation. That was recently reiterated by the CDC and other governmental agencies. School buses are considered public transportation, and thus the mask requirement. Mr. Turkel mentioned at the last meeting that we should strictly enforce the appropriate wearing of masks for all students, staff, teachers, and visitors. To Mr. Kerhobert's point at the last meeting on page 4, there is a statement in there that about transition away from a mask requirement to a mask optional policy whenever we get to that point. Also on page 4 under exceptions, there is listed there in the 5th bullet, adaptations or alternatives may be considered for individuals with documented health conditions or disabilities. There used to be in the old public health order a prohibition against asking somebody to prove why they might not be able to wear a mask. That is not in this current public health order. Also for staff, when students aren't in the building, staff should wear a mask in common spaces, hallways, workrooms, when they can't maintain physical distance. Staff members who may unmask while in their own classroom or workspace, or meeting with others as long as social distance can be maintained. Bottom of page 4, I once again want to reiterate, and I asked Dr. Green this question this afternoon. 2 students in a classroom working collaboratively, if both are masked appropriately, one ends up COVID positive later on, the second student doesn't necessarily have to quarantine. New guidance from the CDC. That does not apply to adults, however, and he could not give me a good explanation as to why that was the case. He didn't write the order or the CDC guidelines, so he wasn't sure. On page 6, in bold print at the bottom, we will continue to communicate with the Lord Fairfax Health District. They have been great partners for the last 18 months. have provided sound advice for 18 months, and we'll continue to rely on that partnership to do the right thing for our students and our staff. On page 11, I just want to mention instructional technology resources. Today, Mr. Hausman pushed out the Google Classroom template for our teachers. It is not as intense as last year's template, but it does provide common language and a common format for teachers to organize their Google Classroom. I am happy to answer any questions you might have. I know there are some.
So one question that we've, can you hear? It doesn't sound like it's on, but hopefully everyone can hear. One question that we've received about busing is that there's a concern that it's not safe for a bus driver to be paying attention to whether or not children are properly wearing their masks while they're driving. So do we have something in place so that we're sure that bus drivers are able to focus on the road and not masks?
Yes. Of course, when students get on the bus, they can be reminded about the mask and how to wear it appropriately. Last year, we did employ our bus camera system on several occasions to contact trace and to do some other work related to masking, and we can continue to do that. Unfortunately, our bus drivers have a lot of experience dealing with this too. So we do feel comfortable with that. We have hired 2 more bus drivers. Mr. Catlett just went and Mr. Trineri just went through that process. So we will be able to disperse students on routes, spread students out a little bit more, but the mask is required, and we will enforce the mask wearing both in person and if we have to use the camera system to do so.
So going back to one of the, you just spoke to this, when teachers are gathered in a large group, like a meeting, if you will, are they supposed to be wearing masks?
If they can maintain appropriate social distance. See, here's where we have the issue.
Okay.
Vaccinated versus unvaccinated
Right.
staff. And that's what causes frustration among people. Vaccinated staff, there are recommendations for masking. Unvaccinated should be masked. If they cannot maintain social distance, it's always an option when students aren't present.
Right. Okay.
It's always an option, but if they can maintain social distance, then we're not requiring the mask. They can.
And then how far is social distancing? It's no longer 6 feet, right? Is it 3 feet?
The 6 foot standard, because it's 5 for adults. It's 6 feet. That's what doesn't make
Okay.
sense.
Okay.
I said this to Dr. Green earlier today. Part of the frustration that many in our community feel about this is the double standard that exists. A student can go to school on a Friday and wear a mask. They can play Little League football or some other community activity on Saturday and not mask. They can go to a church service on Sunday morning with 300 people and not mask. But when they come to school on Monday, they have to wear a mask again. We ran into the same thing last year. As the guidelines changed, at one point we could have 500 people at a football game. The governor announced graduations could be at 30% capacity. Well, we graduate in the football stadium. So that means on a Friday night football game, we could have had 500. Saturday morning, we could have had graduation with 900 in the same venue. That's the difficulty, and that's what it makes, that's what upsets some people when it comes to masking requirements.
And so I think I would say because I did have someone reach out today frustrated that there was a gathering of teachers and it was posted on social media that, and the teachers weren't masked. But unless we understand the specifics regarding the rules, you
That
know,
entire group of people could have been vaccinated
right,
and thus,
right, right, right. And there may have been enough social distancing. I don't know. I don't have a
and you're only
measuring
a
tape
close
and
contact if it's more than 6 feet for more than 15 minutes.
So, as you said, it's very, very frustrating. And I
Yes.
think that we're all kind of ready to lose our minds right now.
Can I just give you my take on that really
Yes.
quick? Last year we went through this with social media, right? Where everybody was seeing pictures of people hanging out, masks, no masks, everybody going to the beach. And it sounds like it may have come up again. So my take on this and this whole thing is we want to be in school 5 days a week. We will mask in school everybody, students and teachers. I don't care what's on social media. I don't care. The double standard is frustrating, and I appreciate it, and I feel the same. But when it comes to our school division and these buildings where our students are, everyone will be masked. And I know, double standard again, with sports. All these folks are asking me, how come we have to be masked in school? But if you play soccer, if you play football, we don't have to be masked. VHSL hasn't said anything about it. So, and that's who we're basing our guidelines on for sports, right?
Yes, and we have imposed some restrictions of our own on athletic teams. As an example, indoor athletic contest practices. Volleyball is the one indoor sport right now. When a student is actively participating in practice or a game, they do not have to mask. If they are sitting on the bench during the game waiting to go in or whatever, they have to mask. So basically the same place we were last year in the spring, we're there again. Outdoors are, again, different set of standards.
So last year when we were in this predicament, it was, how come we aren't going to school 5 days a week? Why aren't we going to school 5 days a week? No one was, people were complaining about masks, but not as much as they were complaining about being in the building 5 days a week. Guess what? We're in the building 5 days a week. That's what everybody wanted. That's what we're doing. That's our priority. That's our priority as a school division. It's our priority based on state mandates. So for the time being, we're gonna wear masks. So I kind of just wanted to put that out there because there's gonna be these double standards everywhere. And it stinks, it's not fair, it's confusing. But again, our buildings with our students and our teachers, we're gonna be wearing masks. Okay, comments. I know we've all received different emails. So, Mr. Schutte, do you want to start? Do you have anything?
Well, I am in support, and I voted for it, the mask.
Can you put your mic down?
Yes,
Please
it is
and thank
on.
you.
Is it working? Can you hear it?
I don't know, but let's try.
I voted before the governor came out for the mask. I agree, if our number one priority is to be back in school for 5 days a week, you do everything you can. Nothing is 100%, but you do everything you can to make sure that as safely as we can go back to school. And I think that we have. So I'm not going to go beyond that, but I think I'm in support of the mask thing, and it's a moot point anyway now because it's a mandate from the state.
All right.
So I am happy to be making the big college try to go back in school.
Yeah.
And being there. So.
Ms. Ryan?
Yeah, to me, it makes sense to have masks in school. I supported it before the governor's mandate, and I still obviously support it so that we can reduce in-school transmission, because I know everyone's on the same page that we do want 5 days a week of school for the kids who want to be there and the parents who want them there. I know for sure that that's Dr. Bishop's goal, because even last year when we were on, at odds about exactly how to go back to school, he wanted everyone in school as much as possible, even when, some of us disagreed about exactly how to do that. So I know that he's sincere in his efforts to keep kids in school 5 days a week. It's the one thing that he has, he has been saying since the very beginning. And so I appreciate the efforts to do that. Even though we're asking everyone to do something that is hard and not fun, we're all going to do it. I had some community questions about lunch specifically, and I know you and I had talked about that at the previous meeting. I had a parent who was concerned, particularly at I think it was particularly at the elementary level, where students can't be vaccinated yet, but probably up through the middle school level at least, about exactly how lunch would look and how were we going to mitigate COVID transmission risk during that unmasked, very close period of time during the day.
Lunch is definitely, or meals are definitely the time when this potentially is more of an issue than others. Even if we were eating classrooms, we're going to be looking at, instead of 10 kids, 12 kids in a classroom, we're going to be looking at classrooms of about 20. The middle and high school is a little easier, and let me just go ahead and address those and kind of get them out of the way, and then we'll talk about elementary. The middle and high school, of course, students can advocate a little better for themselves. They can maybe follow the rules a little bit better and understand what it means to keep appropriate distance, maybe better than an early elementary child or some others for the most part. We have more space. The high school is an example. If you were to walk in there right now, down the main corridor from the front door, just as you pass the front door in front of the auditorium toward the library, there are tables set up in the hallway. They are spreading students out to the greatest extent possible. Middle school will do the same. In their cafeteria area, both have outside spaces that can be utilized by students. They will be supervised, but again, they don't necessarily need the same level of supervision as an elementary child might. Both Boyce and Cooley are working in their cafeterias to put space or a seat between students who are eating, so that center to center, center mass to center mass, probably 5 to 6 feet of distance, if we were to measure.
Are you talking about shoulder to shoulder or across?
Well, we would be staggering across.
Okay.
So we're two different ways we're looking at this. So one is students who are seated on the same side of the table on the stools, to put a stool between those students so that there's space, and then staggering on the other side of the table, students in the different holes, for lack of a better way to describe it.
Okay. Has there been a consideration about spreading the lunch periods over a longer duration during the day?
We start lunch now 10:45-ish to about 1:30.
Brunch.
So we have spread them out for better than half the day.
So that's already been spread out.
Yes, it was already done.
Like in comparison to previous.
It's typically like that. I mean, that's the normal.
So that is normal.
That's
okay.
normal, yeah.
So that's normal capacity lunch periods. They're already spread out.
Right. 10:45-ish to about 1:30 is the end of the.
What would it look like if we wanted our elementary students to be able to some of them go outside when the weather was nice for lunch, staffing wise?
You would have to take an instructional assistant or some other individual and pull them to have them go outside, so that the teacher could have an unencumbered lunch. That instructional assistant, as an example, if they were taking a group of students outside, then they're not working with a group of students on instructional items or academic skills. So it would be pulling them from one task to complete another.
Are some of them currently supervising lunch periods?
One.
Just one for the entire cafeteria?
Right. Well,
So you couldn't send one outside and keep one inside because there is only
Cooley
one?
and Boyce are a little bit different.
Okay.
Cooley's plan this year is to use an instructional assistant, their school security officer, a guidance counselor, and a specialist, because there are 5 specials at Cooley and 4 grade levels or 4
Okay.
grade level classrooms. Boyce would be a little different than that because they have 1 counselor where Cooley has 2 counselors. So a one-size-fits-all approach wouldn't necessarily work. It'd be different in either building, but you might have 4 classrooms in there, and you would have 3 to 4 adults.
Okay. 3 to 4 adults at a time.
Correct.
So conceivably, could some of them go outside to reduce the density in the cafeteria?
Conceivably, yes. And we did some of that last year.
Okay. Is there any kind of like a structured, way to set that up?
It'd be pretty easy. I
Kind
mean,
of scheduling wise, like these 2 classes go outside with this adult or 2
right,
on these days.
the
and-
scheduling would be fairly easy to do in all reality. A supervisor in the lunchroom that day would be assigned a specific teacher or specific classroom, and then they would transition that group of students outside
Okay.
to an appropriate place. Of course, when we start school, it might be fairly warm.
Yeah.
And, shaded areas to be able to sit and relax and not roast might be hard to come by, but it's certainly not something that we couldn't at least look at.
Okay. I mean, I would love to see that. I know we've had a number of concerns from parents, kind of asking about what that would look like, and I think anything that we can do to reduce density during meal times would be appreciated. And who doesn't love to go outside for lunch anyways? So, win-win.
Could we consider, oh, sorry.
go ahead.
Can I just,
Yeah.
so could we consider, you remember last year we had permanent subs? I don't know if that's what we termed them, but the subs that were there kind of every day helping. Could we consider maybe having some type of permanent sub to help during lunchtime? This just thought came to me, so we probably have to think about it.
We have
but-
not specifically advertised for somebody for 4 hours a day for that purpose.
Right,
But trying to get somebody 4 hours middle of the day
yeah,
could be difficult, but we haven't advertised it either.
okay. But
And
I
then-
guess if it starts getting tricky, could it be something we think about?
Potentially, it would be an unbudgeted
Yeah. Co-
position, so we would,
Right.
we'd make it up at the end somehow, but
Yeah,
Years ago, we had those positions.
monitors.
that were lunchtime specific,
Called lunch supervisors.
Uh-huh.
They were extremely hard to fill because,
Yeah.
3 or 4 hours a day.
Yeah, I understand,
But
just,
it can be done, but it can be hard to fill.
yeah, okay, sorry, go ahead.
Okay. That was all I had on lunch, unless anyone else wants to chime in on lunch. And I have one more question. Do you have anything else to say about? I know you had some concerns from the community, but.
Sure. I mean, I think it's good to hear the outdoor opportunities for the middle and the high school are back on track. So that's great. And then it is good to hear that there's some that there is some mitigation going on for the elementary school with the spacing at the tables, and to the extent that we can also provide the outdoor option with the staffing, or if COVID funds could be used for the staffing, if we can find staffing. I know that gets tough, but again, I think it goes back into the whole idea of really just kind of do the continuous improvement as we go, and work with things as we see them evolving. But so far, I think it sounds good from my standpoint.
The other thing I wanted to just bring up again, and I know I also raised at the last meeting, was mandatory staff vaccinations. And today, everyone probably saw that the FDA did give full approval to Pfizer. So, I don't know if our governor is going to step in and mandate that or not, but I want to continue that conversation and considering mandatory staff vaccinations. And did any staff take advantage of the clinic?
One.
So we still have, is it 13% that's not?
It's 28 out of 265 people who responded to the survey.
Okay, and
So,
290
Total
total.
less
So,
than 10%.
so there could be 50 something.
Could be 50-ish.
Staff members who
yes.
are unvaccinated.
Could be.
Around 20%, is that right?
Right.
Is my math right?
Yeah, it's 79 to 86%.
Okay.
that we don't know the window.
So about 20% are either unknown or unvaccinated. Okay. I've been, watching, I know we don't have teachers unions here, but I've been watching teachers unions come out in support of this. I've watched other districts and states mandate it, and I know that we are Clarke County, Virginia, and we are not other districts and states. However, it's also happening in Virginia. And I do think it's same thing I said last time, it's our responsibility to keep those children who can't be vaccinated safe, especially when all the children around them can't be vaccinated. The least we could do would be to vaccinate the adults who are historically more likely to transmit. I don't know if that's the case anymore with Delta. It seems to be a free-for-all, but vaccinated or not. But anyways, I know that we're probably not ready to make a decision like that, but I do want to keep talking about it and considering tweaking our plan as we go. That's all I have.
I think for me, the plan is looking really good. The only thing that I wanted to just address a little bit more is the non-mandatory or the exception to mask wearing when there's no kids in the building. Mm-hmm. So I searched around as I could on VDH and CDC guidance for that, and basically right now it just says if you're not with someone that you live with indoors, you should be wearing a mask, and so that's the guidance. It's not, the question then becomes, is it mandated? And I don't know if the public health order requiring masks in K-12 schools extends to times when kids aren't in the building or not. So there's a legal question there. I think also from the standpoint of someone who's concerned about those around them, that we are potentially putting people in a little bit of an uncomfortable situation if they don't want to necessarily be in a room with other people that are not mask wearing, and regardless of the 6 feet or not, I know that in my own experience that I've been asked to be in meetings, required to be in meetings in an enclosed space for hours where masks are optional, and I'm not comfortable with that personally, but I also know that it inhibits my ability to at least manage my own navigation of COVID following CDC guidelines. So I would say that if we are not going to require mask wearing in schools when kids aren't there, that at the same time we don't require teachers to be in a space with non-mask wearing others for meetings, for things like that. That when we're requiring someone to be in a space with others, that at a minimum in those situations masks are required.
Okay, and
so that's maybe a navigation.
So, as I mentioned last time we met, we started on this piece of the plan the same place we ended the school year, when we had the governor's order in place, and then there was a public health order right after that that expired in July. So that's where we picked up, the same place we picked up. Last year we did have situations where we had teachers who would participate with their colleagues by Google Meet if they were not vaccinated or they weren't comfortable, and we certainly could look at doing something like that again. The easy answer, I think, though, is to say if you're going to be in a team meeting, the third grade team or the social studies department, that if everybody's in the same room, everybody's masked.
Yeah, and hopefully that's acceptable, that if you're required to be in a space with others, the vaccination status, I think, by CDC and VDH, it's not really relevant anymore. They just say if you're indoors with someone that's not in your house, you got to wear a mask. That's their recommendation. And so I guess I have a little bit of trouble just, as I said, requiring people to go against the CDC requirement.
Okay.
How do the rest of you feel about that?
I agree. I think that if there's more than one person together, regardless of vaccination status, especially because it's unknown what your vaccination status is, that this should just be a kind of a blanket. When we're together, we're masked. If you're alone in your classroom, you're not. You don't have to be.
Mr. Shoddy?
I'm the same.
Yeah. Ms. Kerhobert?
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think too, if it's something that we're asking our children to do, granted, 12 and under are not vaccinated, then it's something that we as adults should also be doing.
Okay. So is that something we can add to the,
I can amend bullet 4
okay,
accordingly
Thank you.
before it's sent out in
Thanks.
final form.
okay. Mr. Turkel, was there anything else?
I don't know if this is the time to talk about the COVID-specific funds, and I know I had suggested the air filters in the rooms, and you had said we're putting funds into the overall air conditioning systems, and that, you know, we're uncertain about the cost and potentially efficacy and future use of the units, and it sounded a reasonable response. I just wanted to make sure that there weren't going to be unused COVID funds that were, you know, that we could, that in some way or another would benefit the students or the staff. And so that's what
We have earmarked, according to the grant requirements, we have earmarked every penny for a specific purpose, primarily in the ESSER 3 funds. About 80% of that was for our interventionist, and then along with purchase of some materials and so forth. So those funds have been earmarked for other purposes, and we have a number of years to spend them.
Thank you. That's all I had.
So I have just a couple of questions. One, I don't know how to really word this as a question, but we've had a number of community members express frustration that masks were not worn properly in the spring by staff or by students, and how are we going to deal with compliance of that? And so can you speak to that?
Everybody in a building has a responsibility to wear the mask appropriately and to enforce that, whether it's students policing each other or whether it's staff reminding students. And when you see that the mask isn't being worn appropriately, then you ask that it be adjusted as needed. It could potentially become a discipline issue. And, you know, one would hate to think that a student had some kind of adverse disciplinary action because they didn't wear their mask appropriately, but that's what we could be looking at if it's constant reminders.
Okay. Another question, we brought this up in our work session. Nurses or teachers, whoever, being concerned about children who have allergy symptoms or symptoms of maybe a sinus infection and sending those children to the clinic, and say that the regular nurse isn't there, and this is a student who has allergies, consistently. How will that be handled?
Well, two pieces of that. One is we have had nurse subs in the past to fill in if one of our nurses is out for whatever reason. And last year, we had tremendous communication between our nurses and our families. If a student presented with some kind of symptom or some kind of illness or ailment, nurses were calling families, parents were calling nurses. And even in our spreadsheet that we kept internally with students who were out for whatever reason, COVID-related or not, we've had this constant tracking and monitoring. And we found that some students had ear infections, and some students had allergies, and we had an instance of the flu or two. So that communication is critical, from home to school and school to home.
And we do, this is just speaking to what I know from being a teacher years ago. There typically is a list, right, of medical concerns that you leave with your substitute if, if a problem arises in the classroom. I remember even as a PE teacher having a list of students with seasonal allergies listed on their medical concerns that nurse or I wasn't a nurse, but that my substitute would know if, they were participating in PE that this child has asthma, this child has, whatever health condition it might be.
Right, and the parents, we ask that they disclose those kinds of situations on the registration form when they fill out and register their child for school sometime in July. So those are there. School has those on hand and can share them with PE teachers or others that might need to know about that or need to know that information.
And then there's a concern too with the high school moving from 4 classes to 8, that there's going to be more movement amongst the students, and then also more interaction with staff than you would have if we were doing a block schedule. And so can you speak to why the high school is moving towards 8 classes a day?
Sure. Risk versus reward. Yes, students will be transitioning more frequently, but we believe that the educational benefits and some of the achievement deficits that we saw last year with some students can be better served if they're seeing their teachers every day. We're talking about a population of individuals who, one, are eligible for vaccine, and we do have quite a few students since last spring were filtering out of the school for appointments to get to become vaccinated, and everybody's masked. So those same students will be going to football games on Friday nights, will be attending basketball games, masked, obviously indoors, and who have also been participating in a variety of community activities for months. But we believe the educational benefits far outweigh the risk.
I think those are all of the questions that I have. Just to speak to my thoughts regarding masking, and one, I'm not going to choose to not follow the law. But I also, prior to Governor Northam making his declaration, I really thought hard about masks being optional and understanding that that people are so frustrated and tired of feeling like you're being told what to do with your child, and that the school system is making medical decisions for your child. I understand that frustration. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I get it. And so as I was thinking about it and thinking about, well, maybe they should be optional, maybe we shouldn't be mandating this, I did, and I have watched locally what has happened with some school systems that have said masks are optional. And what I've noticed is that there are these ridiculous stretches of quarantine periods in which students are sent home for a week, or schools are closed just like that, and they're not ready, like the school isn't ready to implement virtual learning because the plan is to focus on children being in school 5 days a week. So there's that issue. And then I have also thought, well, if it's my choice, my child, to wear the mask or not, it does impact our teachers too, because what happens is, so your child, you've decided that, fine, my child's going to miss school for a week because of having to be in quarantine, and that's my choice, and it may be difficult for me regarding my employment because I'm going to have my child at home for, surprise, a week and have to deal with childcare because we don't have that set up anymore, which we did last year through Parks and Rec. So say that you're fine with all of that. Then we're also expecting teachers to create a week's worth of lessons to keep your child on track so that they're ready to go when their quarantine period is over, which, by the way, may start all over again because they've been in contact with somebody else, you know, and they've been back in school for 3 days. So I really have thought about that side of things and the perspective of it's my child and it should be my choice. The thing is, we have to work together as a community to make this work. And it's just mind-blowing still that we're in this situation, but we need our teachers, and it's just an untenable situation for us to expect educators to constantly be coming up with these lessons that are asynchronous. So you're going to be relying on your child to do the work himself or herself, and hopefully they're a motivated student, and hopefully they don't struggle. So that's also played and weighed heavily on my mind in thinking about this and not having a gut reaction that says masks are mandated. I really have thought about it. And again, first of all, I'm following the law, but secondly, we have to think broadly and not just only about ourselves and our child and our situation. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but
No, not really, other than I'll just reiterate what I said a few minutes ago, and I said it a couple of weeks ago. I don't like a mask any more than anybody else does. But I do believe it gives us the best chance to have students in school 5 days a week. I have talked with several colleagues over the last few weeks as schools have started, and there are positive cases in some of those school systems. Through the contact tracing process, what they have learned is that the transmission of the virus or the exposure happened outside of school. So as much as we might like to think, schools are the only place that has this requirement. You can go to the grocery store or church or wherever and not be forced to wear a mask, or it's not required. The fact that there is masking in schools appears to at least slow it down some. But the contact tracing, talked to a colleague today, one last week, and the one last week has been in school since early August. And the contact tracing leads them outside of the school walls. So
the school doesn't have to shut down and the kids can
right.
keep on going.
We last year, we did everything in our power to make sure that we could deliver a virtual program and a hybrid program that met the needs of our students. It wasn't perfect, and none of us has ever claimed that it was. But it wasn't because we didn't try. And we made every attempt to make sure that the students who chose hybrid, or the parents who chose hybrid learning, had an opportunity to send their students to school 2 days a week initially, and then 4 days a week by the end of the year. It wasn't easy, but we made it happen. And we're committed to that level, to that level of service again this year.
Do you have anything else?
I think I did, but I'm forgetting it right now.
You're forgetting it?
It'll come back.
Okay, so I think I made my position pretty clear earlier. I do want to sort of go back to a comment I made about not caring about what's on social media. I don't care what's on social media, but just because of the impact and the noise it caused last year. What I do care about, and I think you touched upon it, is just that this is a community effort. And so making good choices outside of the school building obviously is something that matters to us, but we only have control with what we do in our buildings. So I'll just reiterate it one more time. 5 days a week equals masks. And that's the most important thing. And Dr. Bishop touched upon it as well, that last year was a struggle for many. So remediation is incredibly important for us this year and for years to come. So that's sort of our focus right now. I feel like I'm just echoing everybody's sentiment, but we're all tired of this. I think someone said, when's this going to end? And I don't know. I don't know when any of this is going to end. And that's probably the part that drives us all crazy. But until then, I feel like we just all have to, I think we said this a lot last year, be flexible, right? We'll just have to pivot when we need to. And again, this is for our kids, plain and simple. Dr. Bishop comes in every day and he always says, what decisions am I going to make that are best and in the best interest of our kids? So as a board, as a school division, I think that's our biggest motto. So, I hope we have a good start to the school year next week. I hope our teachers get through the next couple weeks, and we appreciate everything you all have done for us and what I know you'll continue to do. So, do we need to? We need a motion, please.
I move to approve the proposed return to school plan as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion?
And that includes that modification to bullet 4, page 4. Great.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, consideration of COVID-related leave for 2021-2022.
So it was mentioned at the last meeting about the possibility of incentivizing vaccination. And we do have a high degree of vaccination among our staff, even with potentially maybe as many as about 50 people who aren't vaccinated out of our nearly 300 employees. The percentage of employees vaccinated in Clarke County exceeds the Clarke County average by a fairly wide margin. But to that end, we did come up with a process to incentivize vaccination. And with that being said, there are several bullets here that are provided for you in the agenda. Up to 10 days of paid COVID leave. Remember last year when this first started, there were federal funds available to pay for COVID leave. But we would provide up to 10 days of COVID leave for employees under the following conditions. The employee must be vaccinated and the status must be confirmed by paperwork. We got a vaccination card last year. And there's a system out there too that our nurses have access to. If the employee is ordered to quarantine by a medical professional, the health department, or a physician due to exposure in the workplace, that for whatever reason that employee cannot telework, they're too ill, or their job does not allow them to telework. And then all of those criteria must be met, those 3 criteria. That doesn't mean that a person would have to necessarily be COVID positive, because we know that, you could be somewhere over the weekend and show up on Tuesday or Wednesday at school and all of a sudden start to feel bad and be COVID positive for something that happened. But that exposure would have to be in the workplace. That would incentivize vaccine. There will always be people who, for whatever reason, might not be able to take the vaccine. I'm not a medical professional, but I've read enough to know that there are certain groups of people that it might not be appropriate for. But this would be a way to incentivize vaccine, to Mr. Turkell's point at the last meeting. Absent a payroll for, a $50 payment. The state of Maryland a number of months ago, I think they were doing $100 if you got a vaccine. They were using federal funds to do that. But this would be an opportunity to incentivize vaccination among those remaining folks, plus those who have already become vaccinated. Remember, last February, about 70% of our staff had already been fully vaccinated. I mean, pretty incredible. We had our second dose clinic in February and sponsored 4 or 5 clinics throughout the year, including the one last week. So just some food for thought. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I had a question. I think you did a great job here trying to kind of weave that fine line between incentive and not incentivizing behavior we don't want. I mean, it definitely reads that way. I guess the only question I had is, in that idea of not creating incentive that we don't, for behavior we don't want, what happens to this leave if it's not used?
It's not there. So I might get 10 days of leave, but if I don't use it, it's not like that 10 days is added to we just won't be deducting it from their leave balance. If they were to come down with COVID exposure or.
Okay, and then so what happens to that leave balance if it's not used at the end of the year?
They carry it over.
Okay.
To a certain
so the employee doesn't have an incentive then to, if they have this, then they don't have an incentive to use the rest of their paid leave, their sick leave or whatever leave. Great. Then I think, yeah, it's, again, I think you did a good job with navigating the making sure that incentive didn't become, incentivizing the wrong thing.
Any other comments?
No, I really appreciate the thought that you put into this. I think it's a great idea to start with providing incentives. Can you just clear up for me? I can't remember at this moment. Do vaccinated staff who are exposed to COVID have to quarantine now? Is that a change?
No, but it's recommended that they test after 3 days, between day 3 and day 5, if they've had exposure. That's the recommendation from the CDC.
Okay, so it becomes relevant if they test positive,
Correct.
and then they have to quarantine, but it's not. They don't have to quarantine if they're exposed until they test positive.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments?
Thank you.
Okay. And we learned last year that no two situations are the same. So that's why we ask lots of questions, and our nurses are on the front line of this, and they're communicating with myself or Mr. Catlett through building administrators if needed to make sure we get all the information we need to be able to direct and guide people to quarantine appropriately, to isolate, to seek medical attention, whatever it happens to be.
All right, may I have a motion?
I move to approve the COVID-related leave as presented.
Second?
Any further discussion?
I hope nobody has to use it.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Discussion of school improvement strategies for 21-22?
Yes, as you recall, this was a yearly process until COVID struck. There were lots of yearly processes until COVID struck. But I'd like to get back to concentrating, as much as we know that we will spend a lot of time dealing with COVID again this year. I do want to get back to the process of teaching and learning. So when you consider the strategic plan that was adopted a few years ago, we always set strategies that are in concert with that plan. The goals in the strategic plan are highlighted in blue in this document that's attached. And I will cover this fairly quickly. We want to monitor those academic achievement differences. We know that we have achievement gaps that were exacerbated by the pandemic, and we want to close those to the best of our ability during the course of the year. we talked to new teachers last week about just teach every day. Just teach and meet the needs of our students. Take them where they are and run with them. We can't sit back and talk about whether or not a student, a family made the wrong choice last year with hybrid or virtual. Take them where they are when they come in and move along. We're going to evaluate our intervention remediation summer school that we had during the month of July to make sure that a program that we offer next year would be improved. Our interventionists that we've already hired for our schools are under that bullet. Encourage participation and performance in course offerings and experiences aligned with the student's individualized academic plan. We know that our students have to have academic plans from the middle school through the high school, and we want to make sure that we're focusing on those processes with our students and families. Literacy and numeracy at the elementary school and across the board are going to be our areas of focus throughout the course of the year. Curriculum, teachers are always massaging and looking at pacing guides and building lesson plans off of those guides and state level resources. And we want to always make sure that our curriculum here in Clarke meets the standards and the guidelines established by the Department of Education. Yes?
I'm not sure I want to ask this, but I'm going to.
Okay.
Is critical race theory part of our curriculum?
No.
And so is it a standard or anything that we are receiving from the Virginia Department of Education to include in instruction?
There is an equity initiative from the Department of Education. It is not called critical race theory, cultural responsive education. What we concentrate on here in Clarke is treating people, kind of the golden rule, treat people the way you want to be treated, regardless of race, religion, ethnicity, just being a good human being. Work with all of our students on that. People are different, and we need to appreciate we don't have to agree, but appreciating those differences is part of what we try to teach our students every day. Pre-K to 12. But we are not teaching critical race theory. We always want to base our methodologies and practices on research-based best practices. We're going to do some more work on grading this year. 2 years ago, we started down the road of a large division-level discussion of grading, what grades mean, and we want to pick back up on that this year. Under Goal 2, climate. That's going to be critical as we start the school year. Some students we have not seen since March 13th of 2020. If their child was a virtual student last year, or if a family's student was a virtual student, and they did not SOL test or chose not to SOL test, then they have not been in our building since March 13th of 2020. That's going to be a shock for some students when they return. So we need to be cognizant of needs of students, those anxieties and fears that they might have. And I heard countless stories from some teachers and administrators last year about students who were coming into SOL test who looked like a deer in the headlights, like they had entered a foreign country because they hadn't been in school for nearly a year. So we know that we're going to have some of those situations moving forward. Social emotional learning, our guidance counselor support will be critical. The PATHS program at the elementary school, middle school has a SEL curriculum, and high school does a lot of work with outside agencies and getting student supports because high school issues sometimes are much different than middle and elementary issues. Under Goal 3, our personnel, we want to attract, to develop, and retain employees. We continue down the road, and our innovation conference tomorrow has been set up. Our PD for tomorrow, division level, has been set up to provide employees choice with things that they have interest in or might need some additional experience with. And then we also have some specific professional development or learning opportunities for our teachers related to guided reading and the use of Newsela and iReady and other testing programs. So some they have choice and others they don't. But just like we want to have students, give students choice with text and things that they read, we also want to give our employees choice also. We know that competition with our neighboring districts is going to continue to be an issue, and we have also addressed that in our improvement strategies for the year. Technology. Our kids have had enough technology over the last 18 months. A purposeful use and integration of technology is appropriate. Technology is a tool, and as valuable as it is, the use of technology just for the sake of using it is not appropriate. But we do want to meet those technology standards. We are always, under Goal 5, seeking opportunity to be more efficient as a school system, to improve the quality and cost and timeliness of the products and services that we provide, and then continuously evaluating our master plan for the purchase of textbooks, technology, technology infrastructure, and those kinds of things. And then because we know for a number of years we have been losing enrollment, we'll continue to monitor that enrollment and make adjustments as necessary to be as efficient as we can with staff and resources. That's a quick high-level overview. Instead of me reading the entire document to you, it's been posted for several days, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Any questions? So the only comment I'll make is after we get through this school year, so 22-23, maybe we can get our strategic planning committee together to revisit right after this year to see how things go.
Sure.
So, okay. We have a motion.
I move to approve the proposed school improvement strategies for the 2021-2022 school year as presented.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? School board member comments, Mr. Schutte?
I am going to pass. I've said I'm very happy and ready to be heading back to school. That will be my total comment. And I know we're looking at uncharted waters again, and things will come up, but I like where we are right now.
Ms. Ryan?
I'm going to just say, try to be brief. I want to say that I'm really proud of the job that staff has done, and Dr. Bishop and Mr. Catlett putting together this plan in collaboration with all of the other administrators and staff. I'm really proud of the way that this board and administration has followed science throughout the pandemic when it comes to making decisions, and how we've Dr. Bishop has never proposed anything arbitrary to us. And so I really do appreciate that a lot. We are a public institution with a duty to protect our staff and our students. So while people may be out in the community doing these other things, they're private businesses, they're community organizations, they don't share that same duty that we do to keep people safe. And it's precisely because these higher risk activities are taking place outside the community that we outside in the greater community that we do have a responsibility to adhere 100% to our proposed mitigation strategies. I also really appreciate all of the parent and community comments that we've gotten, largely in support of masking mandatory policy. I think parents are eager to have their kids be in school and not be sent home for quarantine and be safe. So I really do appreciate that. I'm proud of the community. I'm really proud of our high staff vaccination numbers. So I'm looking forward to a good school year, and thank you.
Mr. Turkel?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to next week and getting started with the school year. For me, I think, I was so amazed to be reading the improvement strategies for 21-22 and just feeling like it was such a breath of fresh air to be focusing on education instead of the disruption of COVID. And I mean, speaking to the ability for staff to keep their eyes on the purpose, which is to have the kids in school 5 days a week, and to recognize that what's important about what we're doing is the improvement strategies and the education of our kids, and the means to getting there is the compliance with the mitigation plan, the back to school plan that we have in place. And so that's why it's so important to just follow it, not fight about it, and allow the system to focus on education. And that's for all of us to do. But thank you.
Ms. Kerhovert?
So I'm excited about next week, but I'm also nervous. And I think I'm nervous on a good year in August. And so I feel nervous for our kids who, and I may become emotional, have not been in school since March of 2020. I can't imagine what they're feeling. I feel nervous for, our teachers and having to have a plan ready for a child to be out for a week at a time, and the pressure of making sure that that child is able and ready to jump back into the classroom whenever their quarantine is over. And I want it to go well. And I think that we could see here in the meeting tonight with our comments that, we're trying to strike a balance in our community and respect the concern that some people have that, people are not compliant with their masks, and then also respect the other viewpoint that my child shouldn't have to wear a mask. And it's been a challenge to balance that, but I really believe, and I could be wrong about this, but I think that our community right now is in a good place regarding coming together and recognizing that this is what we need to do to get our children back in school 5 days a week. So this is unrelated to COVID, but I went to the fair last week, and I was so proud of our kids who are showing animals and working so hard to, communicate with community members, asking community members to come out and to buy their animals. And it was also just nice to see kids running around from ride to ride and enjoying cotton candy and popcorn and kind of having a sense of normalcy. I want to say congratulations to Mr. Hauserman on your recent recognition, and we're really fortunate to have you in our county. And just one last thought that's come to me recently, actually two. I'd like to look at making books free and available for all of our students for the summer reading program. It seems pretty heavy at the middle school for honors English, and it kind of came to me as I was purchasing books for my child that could be a barrier for children who are economically disadvantaged, and we may already be doing that. But if we want to increase, that's just something that I've thought of. And then the last thought that I had was that, as families are getting ready to go back to school, and you start purchasing backpacks and new clothes, if you have those things available, please extra available, or jeans that haven't been worn because your kids didn't like them, please reach out to our schools if you have those things available at home, because someone else could very likely use them, especially school supplies, backpacks, lunch boxes. I know a lot of families try to reach out to guidance counselors and their programs, but it's just something that I think we could do. Okay, that's it.
The problem with going last is everybody says what you were planning to say, including recognizing Mr. Hausman. I was so excited to do that. So, Mr. Hausman, thank you. You are definitely a major asset to this division, so we appreciate everything you do. So the other thing I just want to say, which I hope I say often, but I know words just sometimes aren't enough, but you know, we talk about Dr. Bishop and central office a lot and our teachers, but I know our principals, administration, you are working hard every single day. So throughout the summer, having to navigate the needs of the teachers, the needs of the students, our parents, families, and then also having to take into consideration any new policies we adopt. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Again, I don't feel like it's enough, but please know I feel like I can speak for the board that we appreciate you very, very much. I think that's it for me. May I have a motion for to convene to closed session?
Okay, I move to convene a closed session to discuss personnel matters, including appointments and resignations pursuant to Code of Virginia 2.2-3711A and student discipline matters of students A and B pursuant to Code of Virginia 2.2-3711A2. The estimated time required for closed session is 1 hour, and action is expected.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? May I have a motion to reconvene in open session?
I move to reconvene open session.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Pursuant to code section 2.2-3712G of the Code of Virginia, I am certified. Mr. Hobart?
Aye.
Ms. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Shooty?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Tortel?
Aye.
May I have a motion on action?
Move to accept the personnel agenda as presented.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? May I have a motion on student discipline?
Move for the disciplinary action, we remand students A and students B to staff.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody.